My name is Jessica. I'm 27, and I'm a massage therapist. When I first moved to Austin, Texas, I had less than $200 in my pocket and an old suitcase with a busted zipper. I left everything behind: my hometown, a failed marriage, the exhaustion, the debt, the years of regret. I was running from a life that had started to drown me, and I just wanted a chance to breathe again. I rented a tiny studio apartment in the southwest part of the city. You could walk from one end to the other in 5 steps. But it was quiet. It smelled like fresh paint and possibility. On the fridge was a note from the landlord: no noise after 9, take the trash out Tuesdays, avoid parking under the tree, birds nesting. It was silly, but also comforting. And ironically, I found a job almost right away. 2 days after I arrived, I saw a listing: luxury wellness and spa. Hiring certified massage therapist. Experience required. Flexible hours. Excellent pay. I couldn't believe it. Luxury? Spa? In Austin? I showed up for the interview in my best shirt, hair straightened, resume freshly printed. But the second I stepped through the glass door, I felt it: something was off. The place looked unreal. Too clean. Too elegant. Crystal reception desk. White leather chairs. Soft jazz in the background, like some hotel lounge scene. The air smelled of lavender, sandalwood, and a faint but expensive perfume, not the usual store-bought kind. Something exclusive. The woman at the front desk introduced herself as Belinda. Sharp, composed, dressed in a fitted black blazer. Her face reminded me of a business-class flight attendant. Polite, polished, pleasant, but only as deep as protocol allowed. Have you worked in premium spas before? She asked. I've been a private therapist for 5 years. Fully licensed, certified? She gave a tight smile, like she was checking off a box. Perfect. Can you start tomorrow? No paperwork. No ID check. I remember thinking, do places like this even exist in the US? Where you get hired on a smile and a sentence? But I said yes. And the next morning I showed up on time. Inside, everything was exactly the same. Flawless, minimalist, serene. But this time it felt too quiet. No clients waiting. No phones ringing. No receptionist besides Belinda. The rest of the staff? Quiet women in neutral tone clothes, just moving through the space like shadows. No chatter. No greetings. Not even the usual "how's your day going?" They showed me my room. It was beautiful. Warm lighting, heated massage table, even a little Bluetooth speaker I could use to play my own music. It was perfect. And it scared me. There were suspiciously few clients. 1, maybe 2 per shift. All appointments were before noon. After that, the place fell silent again. I asked Belinda about it once. Is it always this slow? We work differently here. Quality, not quantity, she said, without looking up from her screen. But it wasn't just that. There were cameras. Too many. One in the hallway corner. Another above the service area door. Even one discreetly tucked above the employee lounge. I'm not usually paranoid, but something about it gave me chills. Especially the day I walked into the linen room and noticed a side door I hadn't seen before. It was locked with a keypad. Not a supply closet. Supply closets don't need digital locks. After a couple of days, I started noticing more oddities. Some rooms always looked like they were in use, but no one ever went in or came out. No sound. Just a soft, warm glow from under the door, like a stage set with no actors. I'd walk by and feel something tighten in my chest. And Belinda? Always around. She didn't just manage the place, she monitored it. One time, I slowed down near one of those lit but empty rooms. Her voice came from behind me instantly. Need help? Your client's waiting. It felt less like a question, more like a warning. At first, I brushed it off as corporate efficiency. But soon I realized it wasn't just that they didn't want me asking questions. They didn't want me even thinking about them. Every day began to feel like a loop. I'd come in, do 1 or 2 massages, then sip green tea in the staff room, pretending to read articles on my phone. The other employees barely made eye contact. And when they did, their eyes weren't friendly. They were cautious. Like I was already on thin ice and didn't even know it. And then one evening it shifted. I was wiping down my table when I noticed movement by the lobby window. Heels. High heels. And not the kind worn by spa-goers. Short dresses. Perfect makeup. These women weren't here for hot stone therapy. They walked in silently, no greetings, no appointments, just a nod from Belinda and straight to the back rooms. Minutes later, they were followed by men. Expensive suits. Slick cars. No smiles. No talking. They knew exactly where to go. I stood behind the reception desk, pretending to scroll through a spreadsheet, but I was watching. And something inside me twisted. This wasn't relaxation. This wasn't wellness. This wasn't a spa. That night driving home, I couldn't get it out of my head. What was this place? Why was I really here? I went to bed with my body still, but my mind racing. Something told me I had stepped into something much bigger than just a strange job. I just didn't realize how big, not yet. It had been a week since I started working at the spa. I kept my head down, did my massages, avoided unnecessary questions, stayed out of the way. But you know how it is. There's a part of you that you just can't shut off. That inner voice. The one that doesn't shout but whispers. And over time, that whisper gets louder until you can't ignore it anymore. What really started messing with me was the behavior of the other staff. They were there, but they didn't work. One guy with a neck tattoo spent all day in the break room flipping through a sports magazine, nodding at me when I passed by. I never saw him touch a client. Never even leave that chair. There was an older woman, Laura, who always had headphones in. Never spoke unless she absolutely had to. One day, I tried striking up a conversation, just something normal like, "Hey, have you been here long?" She looked at me like I'd asked her to open a vault and muttered, "Look, Jess, around here it's better not to ask questions." Got it. And walked away without looking back. I tried to let it go. Maybe this place just had its own rules. But still it was strange. Empty. Tight. The whole vibe felt less like a spa and more like a carefully curated illusion. Then came Thursday. I gave a massage to an older man, nice guy, said he was a retired professor living out in the suburbs. We chatted, laughed, he tipped generously and left smiling. It was around 3 p.m. After that, nothing. Not a single client. I spent the next 3 hours scrolling on my phone, pretending to look busy. And then, the evening came. And everything changed. Around 6, the place started moving. Women began arriving, one after another. But these weren't the usual clients. These women wore cocktail dresses, designer heels. They didn't check in. Didn't ask for services. They didn't even glance at me. Belinda met them at the back entrance and escorted them quietly to one of the off-limits rooms I'd never seen inside. 15 minutes later, the men started arriving. Every car looked like it had rolled out of a luxury dealership commercial, black SUVs, polished sedans, nothing accidental. The men were sharp. Clean suits. Watches that cost more than my car. Not one of them looked around. They walked straight in like they'd rehearsed it. One of them passed right by me, didn't even glance. He pulled out his phone, dialed someone, and said, "I'm here. Everything's on schedule," and disappeared behind that same locked door. I sat in the waiting area, watching this unfold like I was on the wrong side of a movie screen. Same walls. Same soft lighting. Same lavender scent in the air. But I didn't feel like I was in a spa anymore. I felt like I was sitting in a play I didn't know the script to. And right on cue, Belinda appeared. "You're done for the day, Jess. Go ahead and head home," she said, smiling without warmth. I nodded. But inside, I was shaking. I didn't leave right away. I went to the restroom, turned on the faucet, sat on the toilet lid, and tried to calm my breathing. Tried to get a grip. Because I'd read stories like this. Heard things. Spas that were used as fronts. Out front, it's wellness and candles and self-care. But inside? Something very different. Sometimes it was escort services. Sometimes drugs. Sometimes both. It's one thing to hear about it. It's another thing entirely to be inside it. I walked out of the restroom 15 minutes later. The hallway was empty. The lights had dimmed. The locked doors were shut tight, but I could hear voices. Low. Urgent. I couldn't make out words, but I could feel tension. I made my way to the front door. Caught my own reflection in the glass at reception, pale tense. I barely recognized myself. And that's when I told myself, "You're just here for now. Time to start looking for something else. Don't panic. Leave quietly." But I didn't leave. Something inside held me back. Curiosity? Fear? Maybe I just needed to understand what I'd gotten myself into. I drove home in silence. Got into bed without turning on the light. Just stared at the ceiling, letting the thoughts roll over me like waves. What if this wasn't just a cover? What if it was something serious? I'd only been there a week. I hadn't done anything wrong. But if they were hiding something, that meant there was something worth hiding. And people with something to hide don't like stragglers. I fell asleep anxious, waking up at every sound in the hallway. Every creak of the stairs. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't leaving, not yet. Not until I knew the truth. Sometimes all it takes is one accident. One wrong turn. One glance in the wrong direction. And suddenly everything hidden is right in front of you. That's what happened to me. It was just over 2 weeks after I started the job. I'd already learned how to keep my head down. Do the massages, stay quiet, don't ask questions. I did my work honestly. Cleaned the table, folded the linens. I wasn't part of whatever happened after 6 p.m., but I was still inside. That day I stayed late. One of my clients had canceled last minute, so I figured I'd use the time to tidy up the oil cabinet and reorganize the towels. I finished around 7, just as the spa began shifting into its nightly rhythm. I threw on my jacket and headed down the back hallway, the one staff used instead of the front entrance. I reached the rear door to the parking lot and heard it. A noise. Not loud but sharp, like metal hitting asphalt. I froze. 2 men were standing near the back entrance, partially hidden by the shadows between the security lights. One was tall, bald, with a short beard. The other was lean in a gray jacket. Both wore gloves. And they were hauling heavy plastic crates into the building. Not cosmetic boxes. Not fresh linens. These were industrial storage containers, the kind you see at warehouses or airports. I stayed still, breathing as quietly as I could. They didn't notice me. This one's the last. Shipment goes out tomorrow night, said the bald guy, wiping sweat off his brow with his sleeve. You sure the volume works for the client? Asked the second. Yeah, as long as Belinda handles it right. Belinda. Her name hit me like a gunshot. My throat went dry. Their voices were low, but I caught the keywords. Client. Shipment. Volume. That wasn't massage talk. That wasn't inventory management. I felt it in my bones. I turned to slip away quietly. No sudden moves when I heard footsteps behind me. My heart dropped. It was her. Belinda was standing at the door, one hand resting casually on the frame. She didn't look surprised or alarmed, just calm, like she already knew I was there. Still here, Jess, she said, voice smooth with a faint edge. I thought your shift ended. I forced a smile. Yeah, I was just straightening up. Heading out now. Good, she replied, taking a step closer. You know, when people stick around after hours, they sometimes see things they shouldn't. And that leads to thoughts they shouldn't be thinking. Her tone never changed. Not a threat. Not loud. But every word wrapped in ice. Of course, I nodded. I get it. I walked away fast, never looking back. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my car keys. I drove home gripping the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles turned white. All the way there I repeated to myself. You didn't hear anything. You didn't see anything. Just finish the week. Walk away. Forget it like a bad dream. But by morning, I couldn't keep it quiet anymore. Curiosity is dangerous. It starts as a whisper, then builds into a roar that drowns out everything else. I came in early. On purpose. Told myself I wanted to prep the room. But really I wanted to know. I needed to see that room. The one with the keypad lock. The one where they took the crates. The hallway was empty. Belinda hadn't arrived yet. I walked slowly to the door. The same one. Always locked. I leaned down and noticed something I hadn't before. A narrow gap under the door. Faint blue light spilled through it. I pressed my ear to the wood. No voices. But I heard a low, steady hum. Not like massage equipment. Not like ventilation either. It sounded mechanical. Refrigerated. Like a server room. Or storage. I tried the handle. No surprise, it was locked. And then I saw it. The camera. A small black dome in the ceiling corner, just above the door. I'd never noticed it before. It was recessed into the wall, camouflaged by the paint. But now it was all I could see. And I was standing right under it. I froze. Then backed away slowly like nothing had happened. Returned to my massage room. Sat down. Picked up a bottle of oil and stared at the label like it held the meaning of life. My hands were shaking. My forehead was damp. My heart pounded like a war drum. 30 minutes later the knock came. Or rather, the door opened without warning. It was Belinda. Her face was tight. No smile. You seem a little restless today, Jess. Everything okay? I looked up. Forced a grin. Yeah, just tired. Didn't sleep much. She nodded slowly. You do understand. Some areas in this building are off-limits for a reason. You know that, right? I nodded again. I was just looking for the towel cabinet. The towel cabinet, she said evenly, is right next to your room. Remember that going forward. And just please don't wander. There could be consequences. Her voice stayed soft, almost nurturing, but underneath it was something sharp, like a knife wrapped in velvet. She turned and left, and I stayed, sitting, silent, frozen in my chair, because I knew there was no going back. I was in this now, deep. After that conversation with Belinda, I knew the games were over. Up until that moment, I could still pretend I didn't really understand what I'd walked into, that I was just working in a weird place with weird people. But now, I knew. Not officially, not on paper, but deep inside I knew. This wasn't a spa. It was a front, a serious one, and I was a pawn who wandered onto someone else's board. The next day, I walked into the building like I was stepping into a lion's den. Everything looked the same, clean, fragrant, serene. But I couldn't see it the same way anymore. I knew the silence wasn't peaceful. It was cover. Every person in that place was playing a role. And maybe I was the only one who hadn't read the script. Belinda acted like nothing had happened. Like there hadn't been a camera. Like we hadn't had that conversation. But every movement of hers now felt tighter. Controlled. She wasn't just watching anymore, she was tracking. That whole day I didn't talk to anyone. No massages. I sat in the staff lounge with the manual in my lap, pretending to read about essential oils. I didn't think. I didn't feel. I barely breathed. The goal was simple, don't stand out. Then as evening crept in, the line was crossed completely. Belinda walked into the room. No knock. No warning. She didn't just enter, she claimed the air in it. Jessica, she said. Calm, almost warm. We've noticed, you've been a little too curious. I lowered my phone and looked up. I'm sorry, I don't understand. She stepped closer. In her hand, a tablet. On the screen, a still image from the security footage. Me, standing in front of the locked door. My hand reaching for the handle. You're a smart girl, aren't you? She continued. And smart girls know there are doors in life that aren't meant to be opened. I couldn't speak. My throat had turned to sand. She leaned in, her voice smooth as glass. Let me put it this way, one more step in the wrong direction, and you're out. We'll give you a glowing recommendation, of course. But this detective act? It's not your role. You're not in that movie. She straightened, glanced at the time. You don't have any clients today. Head out early. Get some rest. And with that she left. I sat frozen for 5 full minutes. My brain looping the same sentence again and again. You're too curious. You're too curious. I left quietly, not even letting my shoes make a sound. In the hallway, I passed the bald guy, the one who'd unloaded crates a few nights ago. He looked at me and gave a faint smirk. I didn't smile back. Just kept walking. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't check my phone. Just the road and my hands on the wheel. I could feel every minute in that building stripping something away, my calm, my safety, my identity. At home, I turned on the shower and stood under the hot water for half an hour, trying to wash it off. The fear. The creeping realization that I was being used. Not as a person. Not even as an employee. But as a curtain. Something meaningless, positioned just right so no one would look behind it. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? And say what? I work at a beautiful spa with no customers and got scolded for being too observant? Leave? But if I quit, what then? Would someone follow me? Or would they just erase me? There was only one thing I was sure of, I couldn't stay. So I decided, tomorrow would be my last day. I'd finish my shift, hand in my resignation. No drama. No accusations. Just walk away. The next morning I arrived like always. Made myself a cup of tea. Took one client. The rest of the team acted like nothing was out of place. I played the part of the obedient worker. No one asked questions. But I could feel it, eyes on me. At exactly 4 p.m. I walked to Belinda's office. Knocked. She opened the door with her usual composed smile. Got a minute? I asked. Of course. I stepped in. I think I need to leave. I know this is sudden, but it doesn't feel like the right fit. It's not my place. She nodded. No surprise. No emotion. Just this, I understand. That's a shame, you were good. I'll take care of everything. That was it. I left that day feeling lighter but also on edge. Like something had been closed, but not locked. Like a chapter had ended but not the story. And I was wrong about only one thing. The real ending came the next morning. I thought I had walked away. That I had put a period at the end of this story. I didn't sleep that night. I kept waking up in a cold sweat, listening for sounds in the hallway, stepping out onto my tiny balcony to check the street. It felt like at any moment, a black SUV would pull up and someone in a dark jacket would silently walk up the stairs. But the morning came quietly. Gray as a sheet of paper. Smelled like rain. Still, I decided to drive to the spa, just to grab my things. My box of oils, some paperwork, and that dumb mug that said, "Breathe in, breathe out," that I kept in my locker for no reason. I got there 15 minutes before opening. Wanted to be in and out, no encounters. But I didn't even make it out of the car. Out of nowhere, a black SUV pulled up and parked right in front of the entrance. Then another. Then a van. And suddenly the whole front of the building exploded with movement. Cops. Full gear. Tactical vests. Helmets. Letters across their backs: DEA. FBI. Police. I gripped the steering wheel. Didn't breathe. They moved fast like they'd rehearsed it 100 times. One officer raised a megaphone and shouted, "All individuals inside on the ground. Hands where we can see them. This is a federal raid." Seconds later, the front door shattered. Glass. Yelling. Boots pounding. Command after command shouted over the chaos. Through the broken window, I saw one of the women from the night shift, still in a tight dress, get tackled and pinned to the ground. Right behind her, neck tattoo guy. They cuffed him and shoved him against the wall. Everything slowed down. Like I wasn't really there. Like I was watching a movie. But this wasn't a movie. A minute later, I heard a knock on my window. "Do you work here?" "Roll it down." Slowly. I turned. A young officer in uniform stood outside my car. Serious. Calm. I just came to pick up my things," I stammered. "I don't work here anymore." "Step out of the vehicle. Keep your hands visible." I did what he said. Raised my hands. "Name?" "Jessica Miller." "How long did you work here?" 3 weeks. "I quit yesterday." He stared at me for a beat. Then signaled to someone behind him. Another officer came up. They told me to sit in the van with the others. Inside, I was numb. 3 others were already seated. Laura, the woman with the headphones, stared at the floor. The guy in the gray jacket was in handcuffs. Another employee I barely knew was breathing hard, rubbing his face. An hour passed. They called us in, one at a time, for questioning. When it was my turn, they brought me into one of the rooms at the spa, only now it looked nothing like before. It had become a mobile command center. Wires. Laptops. Plastic tubs filled with evidence. Bags of powder. Guns. Photos. I didn't see Belinda. They sat me at a table. 2 agents across from me. One of them leaned forward. "Agent Reed. Narcotics Division. Miss Miller, we know you just started recently. But we need you to walk us through everything. Every day. Every person. Every strange moment. Start from the beginning." So I did. The cameras. The silence. The women arriving at night. The crates. Belinda's warning. The locked door. The cold threat in her voice. I told it all. No tears. No excuses. No spin. Just the truth. When I finished, Agent Reed nodded slowly. "You're not under investigation. You're not being charged. But we will need you to sign a statement. And we may contact you later. Do you understand?" I nodded. My chest felt like it finally exhaled. Later, standing outside, someone told me the spa had been under surveillance for almost 6 months. It was a transfer hub for drugs, guns, money laundering. Belinda had been under watch the entire time. My massage experience? Just a convenient front. "You were never a target," one agent told me before I left. "They used you as a smokescreen. You were an outsider involved by accident." I drove home. Really home for the first time. Not to a trap. Not to a lie. Home. For days I barely spoke. Just walked through my apartment, touching familiar things like they might vanish. I watched the news. There was a short clip: federal raid in Austin shuts down illegal front posing as wellness spa. No names. No details. No faces. I was a background extra in the same story I had almost lost myself in. But I was still me. A week later, someone called. A lawyer from the spa. Said I could come pick up the rest of my things. I told him, keep them. I don't want anything from that place. Time passed. I found another job. A small honest spa. Regular clients. Honest money. Sometimes I tell people pieces of the story. Not everything. Just fragments. Who would believe you could accidentally land inside a criminal operation in just 3 weeks? But I've learned something. Your instincts? Your body? Your gut? They know. And sometimes surviving just means leaving right on time.